In this video, I'm going to go through the process of building a pair of shoes from scratch using the Slink Developers Kit and Avastar 2.7.94 and Blender 2.79. I'm using the updated version of the Slink Kit, which is version 11, which if you have the Slink Creators Kits, you will find in the Dropbox file. And this rig is updated to Avastar 2.7.94. And you shouldn't get any errors when you first load it up about needing to update the rig. So this is what the kit looks like just directly out of the box. As soon as you open it up, there's a bunch of information over on the right side panel here, which gives you instructions on how to work with this kit, how to rig your garments to these mesh bodies, what the default sliders are, and some disclaimers and information and some update notes as well. So you can see exactly what I've done here. When I update it, I add a little note to say exactly what I've done. So we will just move this over so we've got a better view of the actual 3D view. This is the UV panel, so we won't need those instructions, but I like to keep them handy just in case I need to remind myself of slider settings. And what I've done is I have gone and done a little bit of research on the type of shoe I want to build, and I've found myself a reference picture. So I'm just going to hit N to open up the transform menu. I'll turn on screencast displays just so that you can see what I'm clicking. Make that a bit bigger. Make that a lot bigger. Yep, that all looks good. And then we'll go to background images. So we click this box here to enable it, and then we want to go add image. All views is fine in this case. I'm not going to do a particular left or right. I just want to see the image that I'm working with. Then I go to open, and I'm going to create a pair of kitten heel shoes. So I found this reference image. I'll build something similar to this. Not exactly the same. I like to put my own twist on things, but I like this heel height. I like the shape of the toe. I like the little bow on the front. So I'll do something similar to this. Now we want to scale that background image down a bit. So we go down to the information section of the background image, and we find the size button, which is here. And we just take that down quite a bit, not too far. And then we can fine tune it from here. Whoop. So because I'm not using it to build against, I'm just using it as a reference, I'll drop it down so you can see it on all views. We see it on the side view, we can see it on the front view. Next thing I'm going to do is just select these toe posts, if I can. Okay, if you can't select something, you need to go over to the right-hand side, the outliner, and just click this little arrow right over on the right-hand side. Can't see it on my screen there, but let's just bring this in a bit. There we go. These are the selection enabling buttons. So if this arrow is grayed out, you won't be able to select the object in the 3D view. If the arrow is white, you can select the object, and then you can just hit H to hide it. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into the side view, which is 3 on the number pad key. I'm going to make sure I have the kitten feet lasts available. Slink female kitten lasts. If you want to build on the flat feet, obviously you'll have those available. If you want to build on the point feet, have those available. But we want to build on the kitten feet. And the first thing I do is Shift A, add a mesh cube. And then I hit Tab to go into edit mode. I'm going to delete the bottom vertices. So select them all and then press X and select vertices. So you've just got a plane. You could also just start with a plane. I start with a cube just out of habit. Drag it down in edit mode and scale it down. Just scale it down on all axes until it's roughly the length of your foot, and bring it up into position. And then go into front view, grab these two vertices on this side. And if you want to be able to see through your mesh, make sure you've got this disabled. So if it's enabled, it's blue and you can't see through your mesh to the opposite side. So you can't select through your mesh. If it's grey, you can select through. So I go into front view, I can select both of those vertices there. Now it's the correct width and it's the correct length, so we can start adding geometry. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a subdivision surface modifier, and then I'm going to add a solidified modifier. And I'm going to turn that thickness down to something that is representative of the thickness of this sole here. So we're going to start by building the outer sole. So we press Control R to create an edge loop, and then Control R to create another edge loop. And then we grab this section at the back in side view and drag it up underneath the foot. Drag this part up underneath the foot. So a lot of modeling is just moving around vertices to fit what you want it to be, basically. So I've just enabled this little triangle here, which is a just edit cage to modifier result, which puts the vertices up alongside the mesh instead of being a representation of the true shape of the mesh without the subdivision surface modifier. Because I'm building extremely low polygon, I'm going to just bump up that views to 2. So if we now look at this in wireframe mode, you can see this is still fairly low density mesh, but it means I can build extremely low. So I've got pretty much 3 polygons here, and I've started to develop the shape of this shoe without adding excessive geometry. So I'm going to hit Control R and add another face there, and just start to bring this in and shape it as a sole. Now we don't want this sort of faceted edge in our final product, so I'm going to go up to Shading UVs on the left and select Faces Smooth, and that'll smooth it all out for us so that we can actually see what our end result is going to be. In the underneath view, we want to shape this to look a little more shoe-like, to bring this side in. So we're already getting there with a sole. I'm going to add another edge loop straight down the center so that I can get to that nice pointed toe. So I'm going to pull this toe section out and across. Pull this out. You want to basically not completely cover the soles of the feet in this view because the shoe will go in around the edges of the foot. But you want to make sure you've got a nice sort of rounded shape that looks like the sole of a shoe, basically, is what we're building here. So I'll pull this out to be accommodating of the widest point across the ball of the foot. And then I can pull the toes in a little bit closer. And then I can even pull the toe of this shoe out to a nice sexy point there. So once you've got it looking good in the bottom view, which is Control 7, go into the side view and just make sure you've got the shape of the sole suiting the shape of the shoe you want to make. So we can pull this out a little, make sure that it fits nicely on the actual foot mannequin. Pull the toe up a bit, grab these two and pull them down. So you'll often see me go in and out of wireframe mode just to see what I'm doing a little bit clearer. So now that we've got the sole looking good, I'm going to pull this and I'm going to pull it up. So now we've got a nice little sole there. I'm going to start working on the body of the shoe. So in order to do that, I go back into the sole and I select the outermost edge. So we don't want to select any of these vertices down the center, and I press Shift D to duplicate them. Right click to dismiss the move action, and then select P selection to separate that edge that I just separated, that I just duplicated from the actual mesh. And now we can select that edge. So if we go into object mode and then we select the edge and press tab, we can go in and just select that, edit this edge itself. So then we start building the shoe upwards. So I'm going to extrude and just drag Actually, I'm going to right click and dismiss that move, but that still did the extrude. So then I'm going to drag it up. Make sure proportional editing is off for this step so you don't have to worry about it dragging things it shouldn't be dragging. So we're just basically starting to build the shape of the shoe. So I'm going to just rotate this a little bit so that the toe is a bit flatter and the heel is a bit higher. Start to build it out so that it's properly covering the foot. Going to add an edge loop in here so that we've got a little extra geometry to play with. At this point, I'm going to turn down the subsurf because we don't need quite that many vertices, especially because we will be adding more geometry. I'm going to hit smooth here, and I'm also going to invert the normal so that the solidified part is on the inside of this mesh. So previously it was pointing out. If we invert this flip direction on the normal, it will be calculating inwards. So I'm going to start just pulling this out now, making sure that we have all of the toe covered. Start pulling this in. I'm going to actually pull this entire edge in. So if I just hit Alt S, it just scales it along the normals rather than scaling it uniformly along an axis or all axes. And then I can start pulling this out. Just adjust the shape around the toes. Same here. Because this was quite far in, we can pull it out a fair way in order to get it to fit on the foot there. One thing to note is that the Slink feet lasts are actually the stocking layer. So they should fit fine, especially on the new Redux bodies. They should fit fine over the feet, even if there's a little bit of clipping like this here and there. This is not going to show up in Second Life, so you don't need to worry about it too much. I'm actually going to Alt S and scale this section up a little bit just to give that nice curve. Pull this in so that it fits with the sole. So you've got this nice sole here and this nice curved shape for the foot. All right, now we can move on. So the next bit we want to create is we want to start building up the toe and up over the front of the foot like this section here. So I'm going to select these three vertices right on the front of the toe there, and I'm going to press F to create a face. And then I'm going to turn off the last because I want to create a cut down the middle of it. So I'm going to press K to use the knife cut button. I'm going to select that one vertex in the middle, and then I'm going to put a cut up here. Because this says a subdivision surface modifier on it, the edge is not here, the edge is up here where the true edge of the mesh is. And once we've done that, you can see that that has now cut that triangle into two. And you've got two nice edges there. If you want to, you can also create some quads down here. And then I will do a, nope, that's all that needs to be done. So we've created some quads rather than triangles because quads are a bit easier to work with. We'll just pull this back so that it fits on the sole again. She might just adjust the sole a tiny bit. So just hit tab and then tab into the sole and then fixed it from there. And now what we want to do is bring this and this vertex up. So we select all three, press E to extrude, and then we can add, actually just join these together. So we press Alt M and select at center. Select this one, Alt M at center, and that just merges those vertices at the center there. So now we can turn on the foot again, kitten, and make sure our new geometry fits. So we go into the side view and we bring this down so that it's nice and flush with the foot. Bring this up slightly. Always check and make sure you're getting the right shape here. So I think this can come up, this can all come back, and this can come back. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Just bring this down so that it has a nice rounded shape at the toe there. And then I'm going to do one final extrude of the entire top loop of this shoe. And then I'm going to rotate and scale it. And then pull everything into shape from here. I feel like this can be a little deeper. So what I'm going to do is pull this down, and then go back and adjust the sole accordingly. All right. Make sure it's nice and flush with your foot. You can go into wireframe and pull it until you can see that it's nice and close. So I'm just gradually adding geometry as I think I need it. Try not to go overboard with it because it really isn't necessary, especially with that subdivision surface modifier on. We don't want to have a hugely dense mesh once we get into Second Life. And just adjusting here and there until I get a shape that pleases me. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is move on and work on the heel for a while. So I've gone back into the sole, just making sure everything is properly lined up here because I've made a few changes since I was last in here. All right, that's looking pretty good. Needs a little adjustment at the top here on the shoe side. And a little adjustment over here. Okay, so back into the sole we go. And I want to steal this section. So if we press A to make sure nothing is selected, press B and box select just the arc at the end of the foot there. And then we press Shift D to create a duplicate of those vertices, so those faces. Right click to dismiss the move and then P selection to separate it into its own piece. Then you can go in and edit it separately. So we want to leave the subdivision surface on, but we want to remove the solidify modifier from this section. Back into side view, and we're already editing it. So I would like to move it down slightly, and then I'm going to hit extrude and bring it down to, oh, that's fine. About level with the sole of the shoe there. And bring this forward and then hit scale on the Z axis 0. So we can completely flatten that out. It doesn't look flat because it's got a subdivision surface and it's a bit of a strange shape, but it is flat. So the next thing I want to do is invert the normals, because you can see this is not the same as this because I've inverted the normals on that foot, on that sole. So back into shading UV's toolbox and then flip direction. And now you can see the shading matches the shading of the shoe. And then I'm going to press Control R and add an edge loop down the center. Then I'm going to move that edge loop up and rotate it slightly. I'm going to hit Control R again and add another edge loop, move that one down, and you can see that that's now flattened out the base. And then I'm going to box select that entire section and scale it down on all axes. So just press the scale button. And then I'm going to move it forward to provide the kind of balance you need in a kitten heel shoe. If you have it too far back, you're going to pitch forward. And then it's just a case of shaping the heel to suit what you want it to look like. So we'll scale this down, move it forward a bit. I'm going to keep this section as flat as I can in the y-axis. So I'm going to box select this entire front section of the shoe, of the heel, sorry, and press scale Y0, and that pulls it all flat. That way when we work with it, we'll have a nice flat edge in here. This is the rounded section of the heel, this is the flat section of the heel. Okay, let's keep working here. So I'm going to sharpen up these two edges. I'm actually going to just hide the shoe. Let's name it properly first. Kitten, I'll call them Zoe, because that's the name they're going to be. Shoe. And I'll call this Zoe Sole. I'll call this Zoe Heel. And I'm going to hide the shoe and the sole and the kitten feet, so I can actually just work on the heel by itself. So I want to get rid of these faces in here. So I'll select all of those. I don't want to get rid of this edge, but I'll select those two faces in the middle because they don't need to be there. They're not seen in the final product and they just add extra geometry that doesn't need to be there. So select vertices and then faces. And then we can select that outer edge there and scale it down so that we've got a nice sharp edge. Then I'm going to select this edge and press Shift E to bring it up to sharp. Then I'm going to select this edge and do the same thing. Shift E, bring it up to sharp. And then this edge down the bottom here. Actually, I'm going to put in another edge loop first. No, I'm not. Shift E, bring it up to sharp. Not quite sharp. Now we can play with this. So scale it on the x-axis to bring in the width of that heel. Scale X, just to make it nice and straight and up and down. Slide this edge up. Now we can properly Shift E this edge. That's getting somewhere. Bring all of this in. Okay, how's that looking? That looks pretty good. I think there needs to be more of a curve here, so I'm just going to select all of these, not those ones, and pull this out. And then I'm going to select these and pull them up. Now we can turn on the shoe again and the sole and see how we're looking. Okay, looking good. I'm going to scale this in and just move it in so that it sits inside the sole. Actually, I think I want it to sit outside, because if we examine our reference picture, you can see that the sole comes up to this point and then the heel joins directly onto the base of the shoe. So that's what I want to do here. So we'll adjust our process a little bit, and I'm going to take the sole and grab these sections, this section here. I'm going to hit rotate, bring it around, and bring it down to the front of the heel. And then adjust it to suit. So this part goes in front of the heel. Okay, now that I've got the heel in the shape I want it to be, I hid the sole and I made sure that the heel was exactly where I wanted it to be. I can come back and keep working on the sole. And I realized I have too much geometry in there, so I deleted a bunch by selecting the edge loop and pressing X and selecting either, you can do dissolve edges if you want to get rid of the edges, if you want to get rid of the edge loop, either does the same thing. And now I'm just going to tweak that sole into its proper shape. Trying to keep things fairly well scaled in their various axes so that I don't end up getting a wonky looking mesh. That's starting to get somewhere. Just make sure the bottom edges line up so that it looks nice and neat. There we go, it's looking pretty good. And just make sure there's no weird little clipping issues like this section here. Now that we've done that shoe model, I'm going to turn the kitten lasts back on. Just do a quick turn around and make sure I don't have any strange fit problems. And I do have a couple of things to fix here and there, so I'm just going to go in and do that. I feel like I need an extra row here, so I'm going to Control R and add one. Just pull it out slightly and make sure it still fits in the base of the shoe. Double check everything around it just to make sure it's all looking good. Okay. In general, I try and put geometry where it's needed, so around curves, along edges, things that need to be sharp, or things that need to go around corners. So I don't tend to put it on big flat areas like this that don't need those extra corners. So you can see if we look at it in wireframe, this is still fairly low density mesh. The sole is a little higher density, but I'll go through and remove some of that geometry later when I apply the modifier. Same thing with the heel. We really don't need all of this extra geometry here, so I'll go through and remove some of that later.